Hello everyone, Radhe Radhe all of you. Welcome back to the digitized mode of learning through Shikshak Junction. And now what we have talked about is all about the human reproductive system of males as well as of females. Some small topics are left, तो उसको भी हम cover करेंगे. तो इस लेक्चर के साथ ही आपका जो चैप्टर है वो भी फिनिश हो जाएगा और इस लेक्चर में जो हम स्टार्ट करने वाले हैं दैट इज विद द रिप्रोडक्टिव साइकिल इन केस ऑफ फीमेल्स एंड दैट इज टर्म एज द मेंस्ट्रुएशन. ओके, लेट मी चेंज द कलर सो दैट वी कैन हैव अ नोट ऑफ व्हाट इट इज एक्चुअली. चलो ब्लैक भी नहीं, ब्लू लेते हैं, आज कुछ नया करेंगे, है ना. वैसे तो नया कुछ भी नहीं है इसमें, लेकिन चलो फॉर अ चेंज वी विल अज्यूम द कलर एज ब्लू. तो क्या होगा, देखो सबसे पहले आपको आपके पुराने लेक्चर्स के ऊपर जाना पड़ेगा और वहां से आपको एक बात को समझना पड़ेगा कि व्हेन अ गर्ल चाइल्ड इज बोर्न, what happens is within the ovary the particular child has approximately thousands of what you call it as the immature follicles or immature eggs that are known as the follicles, and by the age of the puberty these immature follicles become mature to release what you call it as ovum or egg. This you have to make very clear in your mind, and this happens in case of females, not in case of males. ठीक है, when a girl child is born, by the age of puberty it begins to release the egg, but at the birth itself the system contains the thousands of immature eggs. Now what happens at the age of puberty, these immature eggs or immature follicles burst, which releases eggs or the ovum, and the process we all know what it is known as. It is known as this ovulation. Now this ovulation process does not happen all the time. Okay, this also you have to take care in your mind. This ovulation does not take place every day after the puberty, but this ovulation happens on approximately the 14th day of the beginning of the menstrual cycle, that is exact, or that is approximately of the 28 days. That is why we have termed it as the ovulation happens in the mid of the cycle, that is approximately on the 14th day, because the menstrual cycle consists of approximately 28 days, or you can say of 1 month also. So the ovulation happens on a particular time in this particular menstrual cycle. Now again go back to the lecture where we have talked about the female reproductive system in detail. There I have told you about the inner lining of the uterus. See, in the last lecture what we have talked about is about the uterus, which is very important for the development of the fetus or for the development of the embryo. Why? Because it contains the blood vessels or endometrial lining, which provide the essential nutrients or essential requirements to the developing embryo. Now what happens after the ovulation? This uterus contains these blood vessels, right? After ovulation, if the particular ovum in case does not receive the sperm or the male gamete for the fertilization part, these blood vessels are of no use to that particular ovum, so it has to be released out of the body, and this happens only when the sperm does not, or sperm is not available for the fertilization. When this ovum reaches this particular point in the fallopian tube, say this one, right? So the endometrial lining is not at all required within the body. So what happens is this unfertilized ovum along with the endometrial lining or along with the blood vessels or tissues, you can say, it comes out in the form of the flow, and that flow is actually known as the menstrual flow or menstrual cycle. This is what is this menstrual cycle or the sexual cycle in case of the females. I repeat once again, when the sperm is not available for the ovum to be fertilized, what happens? This endometrial lining of the uterus is not at all required in the body. It comes out through the body along with all these blood vessels that are there, required in case if the ovum gets fertilized with the sperm and the embryo development start. That is all what we have discussed in our embryonic development, है ना. तो जब एम्ब्रियो नहीं बन रहा है तो ये यूट्रस की जो लाइनिंग है या जो ब्लड वेसल्स हैं वो रिक्वायर्ड नहीं है, तो इट कम्स आउट फ्रॉम द बॉडी along with the unfertilized ovum in the form of the flow or in the form of the blood vessels, that is known as this menstrual flow, and this particular cycle is known as the menstrual cycle. This menstruation lasts for about 3 to 5 days normally. Okay, now again an important point regarding this menstruation is this, ki the menstruation or this menstrual cycle is not solely depends upon the ovum, but yes, this menstruation is controlled by certain hormones that are actually those hormones which are secreted by the female reproductive system, and we have already discussed about that, right? So you have to keep in mind that this menstruation is controlled by the hormones. Now, two important terminologies. For that I'll change the color and then I'll make you explain what are those important terminologies. Okay, so what these terminologies are actually, the two terminologies are the menarche and menopause. ठीक है, menarche is the particular time when the first onset of the menstruation occurs, and that is at the age of the puberty. So first onset of menstruation at the age of puberty is termed as the menarche. ठीक है, और age puberty की ही हो गई तो that means around 10 to 12 years. ठीक है, this menarche happens. Now what happens in the menopause? Menopause is the opposite of the menarche. Menarche is marked by the initiation. Menopause is marked by the permanent stoppage of the menstruation. Okay, so that particular stage is known as the menopause, and it usually happens around 45 to 50 years of age, right? So these are two important terminologies which you must remember with respect to this particular topic. So this is all about the menstruation part. Now an important thing to discuss here regarding this very particular lecture is, okay, what we have to discuss, so one more important point regarding what regarding this birth control measures, not into very much detail, but yes, why this birth control is required. We all know that the population is increasing at an alarming rate. So in order to control this population, increase in the population, we need to control the birth, and for that certain birth control measures are taken as a method to prevent or to just make a break at this population. Why this increase in population is harmful? Because it leads to the competition for the basic needs, and those basic needs are what? Roti, kapda and makan, that is food, clothes and shelter. So increasing population has led to the competition among these three fields. That is why the control over the population is important. For that, what is practiced? Family planning methodologies are given importance, either it be from the side of the government or with the help of the NGOs or with the help of the awareness among the youths. This family planning programs are getting run out, which leads to the control among these increase in the population. Okay, how is this achieved? This is achieved through various birth control measures. And what are these birth control measures? These are included under three categories. Okay, birth control measures. These have been termed into three categories or three methodologies. What are they? Number one is the barrier method. Number two is the chemical method, and number three is the surgical method. So these are the three main methodologies through which this family planning programs for birth control measures are practiced. How it is? Barrier methods means physical barriers are being employed in order to protect the fertilization part. How it happens? See, we have various physical barriers available in the market in the form of the diaphragms that are usually there to be applied in order to control the birth. Okay, so these are the barrier methods. Main point is in order to protect the fertilization or meeting of the ovum and the sperm, which ultimately leads to the fertilization. Chemical measures include certain pills which are orally taken or are injected by the females in order to control this particular process, and among these chemical methods we have two pills that are available, that are oral and vaginal pills. Both these pills contains the hormones which in turn leads to the same process. Oral pills contains the hormones like estrogen or progesterone, which in turn what happens is they stop the ovaries from releasing the ovum. When ovum is not released, obviously बात है fertilization नहीं होगा. Vaginal process में vaginal pills में they contains the chemicals that contain the spermicides. Spermicides means they have the capability to kill the sperm, so that is how these vaginal pills work. What happens in the surgical methods? There are two methods that are employed, each one separate in case of the males and the females, and what that particular method is in case of males. If you talk about in case of males, it is termed as the vasectomy. Okay, naming goes with the system. Vasectomy, remember what we have studied in case of the sperm duct or vas difference, it is present in case of males. So during the surgical procedure, what happens is the small part of this vas difference is cut surgically or is removed, and the ends are ligated so that it prevents the entry of sperm into the reproductive system. So that is why it is termed as the vasectomy. It happens in case of the males. What happens in case of females? Similar process, but yes, here it is known as tubectomy. Why? Because the fallopian tube, small portion of the fallopian tube is tied and the ends are ligated, which in turn prevents the ovum from reaching into the system. That is why it is termed as the tubectomy. Fundamental is same, naming is different on the basis of the part that has been removed or ligated. This is about the surgical method. Next, another birth control measure which is not included within this is the IUDs, or what you call it as the intrauterine devices. फिर से नाम से ही क्लियर हो रहा है, इंट्रा मीन्स इनसाइड, यूट्राइन मीन्स यूट्रस. ओके, लेट मी राइट डाउन द फुल फॉर्म ऑल्सो सो दैट you might not be confused. It is intrauterine devices, so certain devices which can be inserted into the uterus in order to what? In order to prevent the implantation of the fertilized egg. So that is how this intrauterine, see, if it is placed into the uterus, that means it prevents the implantation. For all these particular methods, you have to be very clear of what I have already told you in the previous lectures. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand what it is actually. राइट, चलो एक और छोटा सा टॉपिक रह गया है, इसी में वो भी ख़त्म करते हैं और उसके साथ हमारा जो चैप्टर है वो ख़त्म हो जाएगा. तो जो एक और टॉपिक बचा हुआ है हमारे इस चैप्टर के अंदर डिस्कस करना, वो है STDs, that is sexually transmitted diseases. Actually, the birth control measures, either it be physical, either it be chemical or IUDs, whatever it is, right? So these barriers have in fact been very popular or very useful because they also lead to an important thing, that is the prevention of this STDs. What STDs are? They are sexually transmitted diseases, means the diseases that are transmitted through the sexual contact with the infected person are known as the sexual transmitted diseases. So these physical barriers or whatever barriers are being used, these have decreases the possibility of this sexually transmitted diseases or STDs. Some of the STDs, examples of some of the STDs include gonorrhea. Okay, few examples are there in your course, you just have to remember that. Gonorrhea ho gaya. Syphilis is another disease, another STD which is there. Next, AIDS is there, a very deadly disease which if at all is not detected, or if detected early, it is fatal. Okay, this gonorrhea and syphilis are caused by the bacterium they are caused by the bacteria. This AIDS is caused by a virus, that is HIV virus, human immunodeficiency. These two, because are caused by the bacteria, are not fatal if they are diagnosed early, right? That means the cure is possible, but the early detection is very important. However, this HIV disease is a special kind of disease in which a patient does not die because of this HIV infection. He or she dies because of the weak immunity. इम्यूनिटी बिकम्स सो वीक, मतलब जो हमें नॉर्मल इन्फेक्शंस होते हैं ना, जैसे कॉमन कोल्ड हो गया, ये ऐसे वैसे इन्फेक्शन जो हमारी बॉडी नॉर्मली भी फाइट कर लेती है, अगर पर्सन HIV इन्फेक्शन से या फिर एड्स हो गया, HIV इन्फेक्शन हो गया उसको, तो इम्यूनिटी बिकम्स सो वीक दैट पर्सन बिकम्स वल्नरेबल टू वेरी कॉमन डिसीजेस दैट आर usually found out easily through our body. So the person dies because of those particular infections which are curable otherwise if our immunity is strong. So that is all about this STDs, their causative agents, some of the examples of the diseases and how these diseases are harmful. Their proper cure is required and obviously awareness is very much important, right? So this is all about the chapter. We have finished the chapter. If you have any doubts, you are free to ask anywhere, either through the Gmail or through the comment section, right? I am there to explain you with all the doubts. Now with this chapter has come to an end, we are also closing this digitized modes and we will be back on our board methodology of teaching, similar to what we are doing in the previous classes. So this is all about the lecture, this is all about this chapter. I hope you have understood that. If not, you are welcome to ask your queries anywhere. So we will meet in our next lecture. Till then, have a good day all of you. Take care.